Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I'm Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Well, Tony, we just got home moments ago from the Ohio State National Championship celebration. So I assume every Ohio State fan is happy and rejoicing and in a great mood right now. And what could possibly go wrong?
Well, Tom, we are here with a breaking news show. Jim Knowles reportedly headed off to Penn State. That's something we've been hearing about. And I would like to say, yes, you may be losing a head coach, but you still have a national championship. And it's still okay to be quite happy about that and to enjoy the year-long process of getting to the trophies, and losing coaches is part of the process. It's and Ryan Day said after the game they're going to do everything they can to keep this group together. I think he fulfilled that promise. They did everything they could, but in the end, according to Pete Thamel, Jim Knowles is going to make $3.1 million over for the first year of what is going to be a 3-year deal. So it's like 3 years, 9.3 million, and probably some boosts in there for winning national championships and Big Tens, if that's such a thing in Penn State.
Yeah, and I think this is one of these things where you have to just sort of, first of all, like let's big picture this for a moment. If I told every Ohio State fan 3 years ago, in the wake of the Kerry Combs, Matt Barnes debacle of a defense in 2020 and 2021, that Jim Knowles was going to come into Ohio State, he was going to be there for 3 years. The defense was going to be dramatically improved in 2022, dramatically improved from that in 2023, and then even better than that in 2024, and they were going to win the national championship. How many yards of broken glass would those Ohio State fans have crawled over to get to that point? I think the number is probably 30 plus. Here we are. Are you happy? Like, you should be happy. Like, this is something that, like, let's it has been less than a week since a Jim Knowles led defense led Ohio State to a national championship. You can just sort of say thank you very much and tip your hat and say best of luck in your future endeavors. Like, that is that is the rational response to this. I recognize there's a lot of people calling him a traitor. The fact that so many of those people are spelling it Trader should tell you the probably, what you should think about the this guy is a traitor kind of mentality. But this is like welcome to college football. This is what life is in college football now.
Well, I saw, before we get to the super chat, I saw a Barstool account from your old neck of the woods talking about how Jim Knowles is dead to me now. And it's like, well, no, he's still very much a part of this entire process. And it's okay to just, sometimes you put your time in and it's like, I'm ready to put my time in somewhere else. And I think that kind of takes us into Ryan Dawes super chat about, I cannot wait to hear you guys talk about why Penn State, seriously, why. And honestly, to me, Penn State makes more sense than Oklahoma. The Oklahoma thing felt like a temporary 1-year deal type of thing. Penn State, James Franklin has more security. I expect Jim Knowles to be there for the entirety of the 3 years because James Franklin will be there. He's a Pennsylvania guy, even though Philadelphia it isn't technically Pennsylvania, Tom. It's more New Jersey, but it's its own state, Philadelphia, as you know. But I don't. Like, Penn State is very defensive focused, and I think the bigger challenges for Penn State are on the offensive side of the ball. But Jim Knowles knows the Big Ten now. To me, this is as much about getting away from Ohio State as going to Penn State. And like I said, these 3 years, I feel like Jim Knowles has had to kind of carry the defensive staff up a hill throughout this entire portion and fight for his style of defense all along the way. And so after 3 years of that, winning a national championship, there's no better time to go. So I have, this makes total sense. And there's at times before the season and during the season when it felt like something's going to have to give. And this wouldn't be a huge surprise if this was honestly anybody's last year at Ohio State.
Right. I mean, if you have ever worked in an office before or any kind of professional workplace, sometimes there are interpersonal dynamics that are you're not everyone's best friend, and not everyone stays working in the same office forever, even if the company's doing well. Sometimes you leave and you get another job. Sometimes you're not absolute best friends with everyone you work with. Like that, I don't know why people think that, well, it's a football team, so this is going to be different. Like, no, this is an extremely high pressure kind of environment. Like, yeah, of course there's going to be stress and disagreements on how to do stuff. If there was just like one answer for how to do stuff, everyone would just do that, and everyone's defense would shut out every team that they're playing because that's the answer. Except then there's an answer on offense, and then you'd score touchdowns every time. It's like, no, this is not exactly how this works. And there's different philosophies, and there's different views on things, and sometimes you're going to have different coaches on the staff where I want to do this with my portion of the defense, and then the defensive coordinator wants you to do something different, and that's not how you've necessarily always done it. And sometimes you're going to have people mediating those discussions, and the old, a good compromise leaves everyone angry. Like, yeah, guess what? Like, sometimes you're going to be compromising some things and meeting in the middle, and that's going to make people upset. And you certainly have seen the Jim Knowles defense being more of the Jim Knowles defense towards the end of the year, to great effect at Ohio State. But that was not just, he was not just given, do whatever you want with whatever you want, and you're in charge of everything, and no one can question your authority. That's not how that works. And so now he's moving on to another place where it's kind of a fresh start. You're not, the interpersonal dynamics, for better or for worse, are going to be different there at Penn State. And maybe he's being given more of a free rein to do whatever he wants and just literally just be in charge of everything and have no input from anyone else. And maybe, I don't know. We don't know exactly what James Franklin's promised him. I'm guessing, given the fact that James Franklin is now in the spot where Ryan Day was a little while ago, where it's like, boy, I'm winning a lot of football games, but also a lot of people are sick of me for some reason. And, James Franklin has not, Ryan Day has achieved far more in his position than James Franklin has in his, but, it's certainly James Franklin has those hurdles that he can't get over right now. And, he managed to make the semifinals of the college football playoff and not change the narrative around his program at all, because he lost to Ohio State, beat two teams that were just kind of like in the college football playoff. And then when he got to, the sort of the big brand name team, he had a lead, and then they blew it. And then they made some crappy decisions at the end of the game, and then they lost the game. And so you managed to make the Final Four of the college football playoff and not change the narrative around your team at all. You were on the verge of making the national championship and somehow didn't change the narrative around your team at all. So this is James Franklin is probably a little more motivated than Ryan Day to drop whatever bag he dropped, and also to say, you're in charge, boss. Like, go ahead and do your thing, because whatever it is, you gotta, Penn State needs to take that next step.
Well, and Joe Ressa asks in the comments, is this for sure that Jim Knowles is leaving? Ohio State has not spoken about this. Penn State, as far as I know, has not spoken about this. There are reports out there. We're all hearing it, so that's why it's being put out there. Talked to Ross Bjork, Ohio State AD, today about Jim Knowles and also about Chip Kelly being courted by some NFL teams, and he said today's a day of celebration. Don't want to talk about any contract stuff. So that was not unexpected in terms of that answer. Did I see another super chat in here?
Yes, you did. You saw one from Jordan Kapler, who I got to meet in person at the Ohio State National Championship celebration.
I did not get to meet Jordan, unfortunately.
Well, sounds like you're about to be a part of Club Kevin, if you ask me. Jordan says, I think it goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyways. This is all Kevin Noon's fault. Listen, prove to me that it isn't.
Well, we've got two sources saying this, so that pretty much makes it true. And then, so who's next? And I know it all starts with familiarity whenever we're speculating. And that takes us to Richie Dubs here. Ryan Day's Matt Guerrieri praise makes it seem like he's for sure the next DC. And I don't know how many people caught that, but Ryan Day did say today at the celebration, referring to Matt Guerrieri, Ohio State safeties coach, one of the brightest minds in college football, and I'm telling you, a star in the making, our safeties coach, Matt Guerrieri. It was almost like, Tom, he was making sure everybody knew who he was before he names him the defensive coordinator. Now, I'm not going to say that's what's happening here, but if you were going to name him defensive coordinator at some point, you would like to announce him to the crowd like, hey, this is Matt Guerrieri, rising star, part of the national championship. Do you know Caleb Downs? Tremendous. Do you know Lathan Ransom? Very good. Jordan Hancock. He worked with all of these guys. And oh, by the way, now we're going to make him the second or third or fourth most important position in the entire football program. And I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but Ryan Day, he's not afraid of the internal hires, but when it's come to defensive coordinators, the internal hire has not gone well for him.
Yeah, that's true. And that's, the internal hire was Kerry Combs following the departure of Jeff Hafley.
Even though he was external, but no, that's my bad.
Yeah. But, why would you pick Matt Guerrieri? So, this is one of these things where we've obviously been hearing quite a bit about the Knowles to Penn State thing. And it was like, it seemed like it was trending that way. And then last night we basically put on our board like, yeah, you should sort of brace for impact on this one because it's probably going to happen. And so Matt Guerrieri has been from day one when we've been talking about the potential departure of Jim Knowles, whether it's to Oklahoma or Penn State. Matt Guerrieri has always been the first name that we've been talking about. And the reason is Matt Guerrieri has coached with Jim Knowles in multiple stops before. He coached with Jim Knowles at Duke. He's coached with Jim Knowles at Ohio State. And this is someone who knows the Jim Knowles defense about as well as anyone outside of Jim Knowles. And he has been very, very effective as Ohio State's safeties coach, which, Jim Knowles perpetually talked about that defense being a safety-driven defense. So Guerrieri has been intimately involved with this defense and is in terms of being a continuity hire, the single best continuity hire you can have if you want to keep running the Jim Knowles defense, which why wouldn't you? Of course you want to keep running the Jim Knowles defense, or, and this is now going to this will become the Matt Guerrieri defense because you'll have different iterations and different moves off of there. And, he was a co-DC at Indiana for 1 year, but this is going to be pretty much his first year really, really running the show, unquestionably not coaching under Tom Allen, who figures into this story in a couple of different ways because he coached under Tom Allen, who was a defensive first head coach at Indiana. But Tom Allen, of course, was also the defensive coordinator at Penn State this past season and then left for Clemson. So, Tom Allen has a couple different roles in this whole story. But that's why I think Matt Guerrieri is the most likely choice. And, going into that national championship celebration at Ohio Stadium today, obviously we had a sense that this was likely where this was trending. And we had a sense that Matt Guerrieri was likely someone who was going to be the next guy up. So when you looked around and you didn't see Jim Knowles, it was kind of like, okay, I can read those tea leaves. And then when Ryan Day is talking about Matt Guerrieri as the greatest thing since sliced bread, or the next, the next soon to be greatest thing since sliced bread, well, I can read those tea leaves as well.
I'm seeing Josh R saying if Guerrieri takes the DC position, get ready for mass departures. To which Hummus Hero responds, Knowles never recruited. This probably won't cause players to leave. And that's the thing. Like the recruits are all recruited by the position coaches. And Jim Knowles does not have a position to coach. He's never been seen as a recruiter. He is a tremendous defensive coordinator and a tremendous defensive mind. He makes your defenses better. He eventually makes them one of the best in the nation. He did it at Oklahoma State. He did it at Ohio State. But he's not the recruiter that you could potentially add to the staff. So I don't know that anybody, how many more players can leave that have already gone to the NFL? And really, they would have to leave after the spring because the portal window is now closed and it doesn't open back up for assistant coaches. So, that's people love Knowles and everybody loves the way that he coaches them, but he's not a position coach. So he's not as close to the players. He did not bring them in. He's never been a top-notch recruiter. So everybody came in for their own reasons. And I don't know that Jim Knowles was at the top of anybody's list. There are other reasons, and that's not to diminish what he did because, as I said, it's fantastic. Ryan Day called him the best defensive coordinator in the nation. Really, I don't know how you dispute that based on what we've seen to this point.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. And there are times when someone leaves Ohio State and will tell you, here's why they're not that sad to see him go. Jim Knowles, I think they're very sad to see Jim Knowles go. I think they very clearly wanted to keep Jim Knowles on staff because Jim Knowles is a fantastic defensive coordinator. He has had an immense impact on the Ohio State defense over the last few years. And while he certainly personally is not a particularly dynamic recruiter, and that's something you hear from pretty much everyone, if you have a fantastic defense, that does sort of provide its own gravity in terms of recruiting, where do you want to come play for the number one defense in the country? Yeah, you might want to do that. And Jim Knowles is certainly, I think Jim Knowles personality wise probably appeals more to people like your age and my age than he does necessarily to 18-year-olds. But he's also a beloved figure among the guys on that defense. He was certainly a guy who really had a lot of people. Once you get to know him, I think he's a really, really fun and funny and interesting kind of guy. Just a little bit like someone who views the world a little bit differently than your typical college football coach, I think. And that was some of the, one of the other conversations we had around him. It was like, why would he even be thinking about going to Oklahoma? Why would he even think about going to Penn State? It's like, well, he has a little bit of a different worldview, I think, than a lot of other people do. And you also wonder if potentially, in addition to the interpersonal stuff we talked about earlier, you come to Ohio State, you build it up from a disaster to a national championship defense, and now you kind of want another challenge. Like he doesn't strike me as the kind of person that does well in, sit back and just, okay, now we can kind of put it on cruise control for a while. He doesn't strike me as that type. And he's someone who went to Cornell and was the head coach of Cornell at one point, and very, very, very intelligent guy. And, this is now going to be a new challenge. Can you drag James Franklin to a national championship? Well, you just up the degree of difficulty a little bit.
How good are you? Can you win with the Boston Red Sox and the Chicago Cubs? Not that either of these programs are in line with that, but and I'm seeing comments like from Doug Shepard, "Hey Knowles, if you stay cool, if not, F you." Like, whatever happened to thank you for your service? Thank you for helping my team get to win a national championship, because they're not winning without Jim Knowles. So, what about a thank you for that? And then just let him live, basically. Like, okay, move on. He's not part of this place anymore. So now, stand by the guys who are. And I know that's also a difficult thing for some people to do as well when things aren't going perfectly. Just read through some of the comments. Rick asks, it took Knowles 2.5 years into his tenure here to finally figure out how to call stunts, twists, and blitzes. And now he's leaving. Shake my head. It is interesting how every year is kind of very segmented for what Knowles' defense was. The first year, it was much better than the year before, 2021, but he gave up big plays. Then in 2023, they dialed down the aggressiveness, and they kind of got death by 1,000 cuts. And then this year, they were all veterans. They all knew the defense, and they had a bad game plan against Oregon. And so then they had to change things. And then after that, they kind of just dialed it up and looked like it was more of the Jim Knowles, what he wanted to do, Tom. And I know you've got to leave. Do you have anything you want to say before you go?
Well, a couple things, and I can hang on for a couple more minutes. I have to run my kid to hockey practice, so I do need to leave in a few minutes. Kevin Noon is going to be jumping on. Don't all leave at once. It's okay. Tony will still be here, but Kevin will be here momentarily. We can hopefully do a smooth handoff there. But I think you have to look at Jim Knowles and say the response from Ohio State fans right now should be thank you. Like, Jim Knowles brought you the national championship that you really wanted, and now he's going somewhere else. And I have seen I've seen people sort of work their way through the stages of grief already on our board, because we've been talking about this for a couple of days at this point. And, you get the no true Scotsman thing. Like, well, no, he's a fake Buckeye. Like, you as an Ohio State fan probably started rooting for Ohio State, watching Ohio State, going to Ohio State games when you were 5 years old, 6 years old. You might have gone to Ohio State 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago. That's not Jim Knowles' story. Jim Knowles' story is he went to Cornell, and he's coached at a bunch of different places around the country, Cornell and Duke and Oklahoma State, and I think I'm forgetting someone, but he came to Ohio State 3 years ago. Was he no true Oklahoma State Cowboy when he left Oklahoma State to come to Columbus? I mean, guess what? The players were all very sad to see him go when he left Oklahoma State. Those were 3 Oklahoma State defenses that got better each year. He had a fantastic positive impact there. He came to Ohio State. His connection with Ohio State started with Ryan Day handing him a big bag with a dollar sign on it 3 years ago. He had not coached at Ohio State, played at Ohio State. He was handed a big bag with a dollar sign on it to coach really, really good defense and win a national championship. You're never going to believe it, but he coached really, really good defense and won a national championship. And that defense was a big part of why they won the national championship. And now he's going to Penn State because James Franklin's handing him a big bag with a dollar sign on it. Like, is he a true Nittany Lion now? Oh, I mean, maybe he'll coach there for 30 years and become a true Nittany Lion, or maybe 3 years from now he'll retire or go coach at Oklahoma or go coach at USC or come back to Ohio State, whatever. And if he comes back to Ohio State, guess what? You should welcome him with open arms because he's pretty darn good at what he does. So I think you just have to have a little bit of that perspective where just because you would never leave Ohio State doesn't mean that no one would ever leave Ohio State. And this is a great opportunity for him. And so I think the healthy mindset is to say thank you and then, wish him well, except for on November 1st this year. And that's it. And, I think, Tony, I can hand it off to you with the question of, okay, so if Jim Knowles has been going up against this Ohio State offense in practice for years and years and years, does he know all of the secrets? And Ohio State is doomed when they play Penn State. And then my follow-up is, hey, who has the Ohio State offense been going up against in practice for the last 3 years? Like, any thoughts on that? And I'll see if Kevin should be jumping in shortly.
Well, Tom, that depends on whether or not Chip Kelly is coming back. So there's that as well. But
pulls pin and grenade off grenade, rolls into room, closes door.
See you, Tom. Bye. And then I'll just run through a bunch of these questions. Looking here, I saw that Josh R. saying Downs came specifically for Jim Knowles. No. Ohio State came in second in Caleb Downs recruiting to Alabama. And once Nick Saban retired, then Caleb Downs was looking for a place. And the first place he looked was Ohio State and Ryan Day, and then also some NIL and things like that. So Knowles, there's a lot of reasons guys want to play in a Jim Knowles defense, and Jim Knowles was certainly one of them. But there are more things that drew Caleb Downs here than Jim Knowles. And I would say the opportunity to play with a bunch of these guys that he played with is another reason. And now 8 of those starters are off to the NFL. And maybe, I don't think losing all of those guys is why factors in to why Jim Knowles leaves, but you could understand if it was. It's like you win a national championship, you lose 8 starting seniors. These last 3 years have not been easy. There's been stuff behind the scenes that I'm sure there are times he promised himself, if we win it, I'm out of here. If I ever get a chance, I'm out of here, that sort of thing, even though he's got 2 years left on his contract, on his most recent Ohio State contract. But sometimes when you have an opportunity to leave and you've kept telling yourself, if I get a chance, I'm going to go, I think that's what has happened. And then an opportunity to go closer to home, to continue to play a familiar brand of football. And then also Ryan Day always called him the head coach of the defense with guardrails. Like, I don't think you'll have the same guardrails at Penn State. I think he's going to be allowed to do what he wants to do. But now he's been at Ohio State for a while to know, like, I don't have to do it the same way I did it at Oklahoma State. It doesn't need to be too gimmicky or you're trying to fill up spots because you lack talent at Penn State. You'll have all of the talent that you need, just as he did at Ohio State. So it doesn't need to be too quirky, but also he knows what he does works. And so when you can fill it with Ohio State talent or Penn State talent, I expect him to do pretty darn well, just as Tom Allen did, just as Manny Diaz did. Like, you should have a good defense at Penn State. And, Roman Wagner saying going in conference, that's betrayal. Yeah, it's not great, but again, like, this is coaching. We see it all the time in the SEC, and you're starting to see it more and more in the Big Ten because of the money that gets passed around and things like that. And it's just me, Tim 79, saying the same thing. Kevin Hooper, can't be mad at the man. We won a natty. Let's go get another one. That was the last statement was what Ryan Day said as well, even though he did not address any of the Jim Knowles stuff, and nobody did. The message at the end was, let's go get another one. And we will have plenty of time to talk about how they go about doing that and what that defense is going to look like and who is going to be coaching these guys and dialing them in. And Edward Carino says Chip Kelly's on the road. It was just Jim Knowles and Chip Kelly were the only two coaches not there today. Kelly was out recruiting yesterday, an Ohio State potential future quarterback, so he's out on the road. L1915, thank you, Jim Knowles. I hope Penn State gets better from your help. A strong Big Ten is good for the Buckeyes. Hope we can keep our defense at shutout caliber. Good luck with that. There's going to be a step back next year for any number of reasons, and there would have been with Jim Knowles as well. But I do still expect a playoff team for Ohio State. If you go back over the last 30 years, probably the only times they're not making playoffs are 94, 99, 2000, 2001, and 2011. So that's what, 5 years out of 30 that they wouldn't have gotten there. And under Ryan Day, the numbers are even better. That would be every year that Ryan Day has been here, they would be part of a 12-team playoff. And look who is here. It is Kevin Noon. Kevin, did you hear about this Jim Knowles thing? Your thoughts?
Jim who?
Yes.
Yeah,
Knowles.
exactly. Knowles. Chuck Knowles? No. Yeah, it sounded like this thing had been kind of in the works for a minute. Maybe the destination is a bit of a surprise, being Penn State versus Oklahoma. But one way or the other, I think anybody who was kind of following along the last 48 hours thought that this might be something that was going to come to pass. And you not only have to keep your players on your roster, you got to keep your coaches too.
The transfer portal does not close for coaches ever. It's interesting because we've been hearing about Oklahoma for a while, and in the last, 4 or 5 days, Penn State is there, and it's interesting that they lose Tom Allen to Clemson, like they can't afford to keep him, and then they go and get Jim Knowles from Ohio State for nearly $10 million over 3 years. So clearly, like, it's just you lose Tom Allen, but then you're like, well, you know what we're going to do? We're going to go get the number one guy out there. And I think it's a hell of a statement by Penn State. It's an interesting decision by Jim Knowles. It restarts his clock. Not that he was in any trouble, but as we've been saying throughout the first 30 minutes of the show, Kevin, like this was not an easy 3 years for Jim Knowles with the as I said, he kind of had to pull the defensive staff up his hill of defense. And it wasn't always easy, but they finally got it done. And as you might imagine, there are some people who are kind of upset with him leaving and leaving for a Big Ten foe. But I think people should just wish him well, or you know what? Just stop wishing about him at all. You don't even have to wish him well. Just don't wish him ill. Just move on and enjoy your championship. Enjoy your confetti from BuckeyeHuddle.com. If you want some, you can sign up, become a member now, and we'll get some out to you as we have. Until we have none left. But overall, I think it's okay to just wish him well because he was part of a 3 years here as a Buckeye and also happened to help win a national championship.
Yeah, you talk about having to drag people up his hill. I mean, he was brought in to be the head coach of the defense, and it wasn't always a smooth situation. I mean, we could look at the 3 degrees of Jim Knowles as the DC at Ohio State and in turn, kind of how the coaching roster has changed and everything else. And, I've already read people who have said the things already of, well, now back to where they were during the Combs era, Combs part 2. I'm like, well, things change a little bit. The room is deeper. You have coaches, some coaches that are in on the system, but year one of Knowles, well, we're going to bake in 3, 5, 7 big plays against the defense. Well, that didn't work. Year 2, in the biggest of games, they got a little conservative. That didn't work either. Year 3, they seemed to find the comfy bed for Goldilocks. This one's just right and everything else. But, The good news is that they kind of, they have their system in place, and unless Ryan Day decides that he wants to go against, I really don't like single high still, and that means we got to run single high. My biggest question, and I haven't, I went to a Mexican place for lunch, and I said, make it spicy, and they said challenge accepted, and they tear gassed me, and now I feel like hell right now. But all things considered on that is, do they promote from within? Is this a Matt Guerrieri job, or do they go out of house, or do we go something hybrid? I mean, obviously you don't want to bring in something completely foreign and that you're starting over a 3-year cycle as Ohio State when you still have a lot of talented players. Yes, you're turning over 9 of 11 starters on defense. Is that right? I mean,
8.
You get Caleb, you get Sonny, and you get IGB back. So, yeah, we're never going to get to rest. We're never going to get to rest.
The super chat from Taylor Link. I'd prefer to promote Matt Guerrieri to try to keep the same system, especially with the turnover we're going to have on defense. Do you all feel the same or prefer an outside hire? I don't know enough about Matt Guerrieri as a defensive coordinator to really say this would be terrible or this is a home run. Ryan Day has a pretty good sense of what Matt Guerrieri would bring. So, but also he hired Kerry Combs as defensive coordinator. So, there's been some misses, but every coach has had hits and misses. Nick Saban, Urban Meyer among them. I see Rusty Jesse other people talking about Jim Leonard maybe. How successful can a 3-4 be in the league with the change in styles?
They can't even get to 3-4 under Jim Knowles.
Right. So that's the other thing. And they got more multiple with the defensive front, but and really, like I've got people texting me about they need to go back to a 4-3, and you see Rusty talking about the 3-4. Like anymore, 4-3, 3-4, you've got to be more multiple than that. You can't have 4 linebackers on the field anymore, hardly. And you really can't have 3 linebackers on the field on standard downs either. You've got to deal with the opposition that you're facing, and generally they're up tempo and they are throwing the ball around. Jordan Kapler super chat. Fine, I guess I'll take the DC job. Jordan, you would have to take a pay cut, and you won't do it. And the $2.65 million won't be enough for you. Steve makes a good point. Ryan Walters was solid as defensive coordinator at Illinois. That's a very good point. He was really, really good at Illinois. And then
he ran very unique things, though, and they couldn't do that at Purdue. They did not have the bodies and everything else. And again, I don't think that I hate to feel like I'm buying into the same narrative that's out there, but Ohio State, with some of its current constraints that it has defensively, I don't see getting too far away from home in terms of what it's going to run defensively. I do think that there were leading forces within the defense that wanted to go north and south. And I'm not saying north in the standings and south in the standings. I'm just pick 2 directions. And you can't do both of them at the same time. So I think you have to kind of determine who it is, what you are, and everything else. And to Tony's point, multiples. You don't have to sit there. Well, I'm a 4-3 man. My father was a 4-3 man, and my father before him was a 4-3 man. You can have some different flavors out there, but I think that you also have to have a situation of where you have a clear direction, even if that direction has quote unquote multiples.
Yeah, you offenses are multiple. In college football, you're playing a different style of offense every week, so you've got to be able to move with them. And really, like, how often did you see Ohio State with 3 linebackers on the field? It's not a lot, and it's kind of one of those things where it's like, oh, they're going three linebackers for one of the 3 heavy set or the 3 running offenses that they face per season. Kenneth, thanks for the show, gentlemen, but clearly the fans couldn't care less about y'all either, because out of 622 viewers, only 82 likes. Good for y'all. Hit the thumbs up. Make us feel better. Gosh, or else we get more compliments like this, backhanded stuff. So throw the thumbs up. We would appreciate it.
I walked away from my lunch for you people. Come on. I mean, I brought it home, but it's so spicy I'll never be able to eat it. I joked with the waiter or the bartender. I was sitting at the bar. I was like, it's only going to get hotter. He's like, yeah. I'm like, I'm done. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, I've seen a lot of people are up in their feelings, and that's fine until a certain point. And I'm not going to kind of get into, I think, the 900-pound, albatross in the room about, where fandom ends and insanity begins and everything else. But where, no Knowles at the celebration. I didn't see him. Did you see him, Tony? Tom didn't see him. So, I think a lot of people are like, oh, this was all planned to sit there and do it then. I still think it was kind of leaked. I mean, you don't burn a lot of bridges in the industry to sit there. You can't sit there and coach these players and then be like, and just, trump their day like that. So I think it probably got out a little bit early or whatever. I think this is probably going to be a Monday situation, but there's a lot going on.
Well, there is a lot going on. A lot of things are compressed right now. And once you've decided that you are moving, then you kind of become the property of that next place. And you need to do everything you can to put yourself in that position, in the best position, whether that's recruiting, whether that is checking with your staff. Okay, who is my staff? Who am I retaining? Who am I getting rid of? Am I bringing anybody from Ohio State with me? Who wants to come with me? And now, yeah, I'd like to bring this guy from Ohio State and this guy from Ohio State. And those two guys are now talking to Ryan Day, like, what are you going to do for us? What's the plan for us? And one of those guys might be Matt Guerrieri. Like, what is the plan for me? Now, I guarantee you Jim Knowles would love to bring him. I've been told that Matt Guerrieri wasn't planning on leaving, but that was when it was Oklahoma. So, I know a lot of people don't want to go to Oklahoma. And I only know Terrell Pryor who didn't want to go to Penn State. And then that's because it was too country. So there's a deep drop for you. But what do you think with Matt Guerrieri as the possible answer? Because I don't know enough about him as a play caller, as a defensive coordinator, as a game planner, as a guy who wins at rock, paper, scissors and makes the right calls at the right times.
Well, here's the thing, and I had the benefit of the 9 minutes driving home from the local Mexican place to think about some of these things, and there's obviously a continuity thing if you bring Matt in as your DC at this point. People are like, well, I sure don't want to lose guys to the portal. Well, portal's closed. You don't get to go to the portal because your position coach left. You're going to have to wait until spring. Ohio State's going to have a chance to have somebody in place, go through, show everybody their roles. Now, when you're talking about coaches, they are not locked into a transfer portal or anything like that. They can leave whenever the hell they want. So it is an odd fit. And I don't want to turn this into the Kevin thinks that James Franklin is a crappy coach segment, because that should be every segment. James Franklin is a crappy coach. I really don't think I would want to hook my wagon to that engine. Granted, for $3.1 million a year, I might be I choose you, and there's a picture of Jim. I mean, it's kind of, where you stand with all of that. But yes, Penn State made it to the Final Four. Penn State's issues never really seem to be because their defense blows it. It seems to be because their offense blows it. Why was Drew Aller passing when he was at the end of the Notre Dame game? I still think that Penn State would have probably been beat down pretty soundly by Ohio State if that game would have flipped and gone in the other direction. But no, I think that now if Ohio State goes in a different direction and brings in another coordinator, whether it be, and we've thrown some names out there, Jim Leonard, Chris Ash, whoever. I mean, maybe Matt feels a little bit differently getting passed over, and it's like, well, if I'm gonna have to sit in the second chair somewhere, I may as well, have my biggest benefactor, in front of me, because Jim Knowles isn't getting any younger and everything else, and there could be, some sort of plan there to a certain extent. But it also didn't necessarily seem like Jim was suddenly picking up hobbies and wanted to do stuff outside of coaching.
No, he just drinks coffee and a cigar and maybe a little bit of bourbon. Now, Guerrieri is from Ohio, so he has that. He's still only 35 and is Ryan Day, we talked about it earlier, but Kevin, I'm sure you noticed the Ryan Day compliments on Matt Guerrieri as he was introducing him, talking about how he's one of the great young minds in college football. And Day's not the only guy that feels like that. Jim Knowles wanted him back on defense. They basically got rid of Perry Eliano to bring in Matt Guerrieri. And if they were to elevate Guerrieri, then they would have to bring in a safeties coach, but maybe Perry Eliano. No, I don't know. I don't know that Eliano.
You could reshift everything. You could have Walt as your DB's coach, and you could. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that could move there with only one open position, because you are taking a coach that was only the DC. He did not have positional responsibilities. He did it first, but they bring in James Laurinaitis that takes care of all of that. You can, I mean, do you do all of that? Do you bring in somebody who is a co-DC elder statesman type? I mean, I don't know. It's not like Gary is like Keenan Bailey, 21 years old, and I know Keenan pretty well, so I always tell him that he's 21 years old. And just taking his first gig and moving out of his mom's basement or whatever. So I don't know. I mean, and I'm going to throw this out about the Penn State side of things. Jim Knowles, tremendous DC, horrible recruiter. I talked to a Penn State guy a couple of days ago when he brought this whole Penn State to me. He sent me a text about an hour ago. It's like, see, I'm like, yeah, what do you want, a cookie? Things come out of left field or whatever, but I'll be interested to see how all of that comes together. And he's like, well, Penn State doesn't necessarily lean on its coordinators to recruit. I'm like, well, that's pretty evident by your product on the field.
And that's one of the things I was going to bring up to you, and we mentioned it before you got here, is if it is Matt Guerrieri, then it's an improvement on the recruiting side for the defensive coordinator. And if it's not, it's probably still going to be an improvement on the recruiting side. And again, that's not to diminish what Jim Knowles did. It's like he created the best defense in college football. The 2 years before he was here, and I was looking at the numbers in terms of total defense. So Ryan Day's first year, they bring in Jeff Hafley. They go to number 1 in total defense. Hafley goes, and in Kerry Combs' 2 years, Matt Barnes, co-DC, they were 59th in total defense each year. And then they went from like 14th under Knowles in his first year to like 3rd or 5th in his second year to 1st this year. And so he will get Penn State to a good spot. They're already in a good spot. Jimmy Rustler, is James Laurinaitis ready? Also hasn't linebacker been kind of iffy the last few years? I guess you just answered your own question there, because, again, he's been a full-time position coach is this his first year, I believe. He's been a graduate assistant at Ohio State as a linebackers coach, and then also at Notre Dame. So, it's not going to be James Laurinaitis as defensive coordinator. That would be even less of a Brian Hartline as the offensive coordinator was a thing. He didn't call any plays. Like, if you're the defensive coordinator, and you're going to need to be calling plays until they get taken away from you, like they did with Kerry Combs and then given to Matt Barnes, and they've been taken away from other coaches. I'm just thinking through Urban Meyer's time that things kind of shifted over and over again. Neil Harris, once again, Kevin Afternoon, telling it like it is. Kevin, telling it like it is.
Well, I want to get to the earlier point, and I punched that one up before it went away, about have linebackers been iffy? I sat there and listened to Cody Simon and his honors and everything else. I mean, I think that one of the things that happened, and I'm going to try and thread the needle here a little bit. You had guys like Cody Simon that got stuck behind Steel Chambers and Tommy Eichenberg. And, and you're talking about all Big Ten caliber type of players there. And sometimes you just get yourself into a position where maybe you're not able to keep churning guys through. Multiple year starters are great until you have to start them multiple years and you don't get new blood in there, and you kind of maybe feel that you've reached a point of stagnation or something like that. And then obviously Sonny Styles, a guy that was playing safety a year ago, and he's slid down, and I think that he played very well. So I would not hold anything about linebacker development as, to Tony's point about this being a very short-term thing, for Laurinaitis actually being the dude, and also having a 2-year stranglehold by a couple of linebackers to where,
Mm.
Cody Simon was your third linebacker. He was your Arvell Reese back at that point. And, when you'd run 43, then you would sit there and be able to get him out there, but they still were running, a lot of 4-2-5, even though they weren't necessarily calling it that.
I did see somebody ask if we can dig up Buddy Ryan. The thing about old school football defenses is that they would get thrown on all over the place unless you got to the quarterback with a hammer and a fist before he got rid of the ball. Is Vrabel really available? No, he is not available. Saw somebody ask, where is Jim Leonard now? He is a position coach with the Denver Broncos. And so, I'm sure he would be willing to come back to college. Although I can't say that because college is so much different now than a few years ago. And I'm always saying I can't blame any college coach for leaving for the NFL because the idea that once you land players, you have to keep landing that same player has to be exhausting. It's just not fair for the coaches, even though that's what the money's for, Kevin.
Yeah, Market X saying, what about Deonton Lynn from USC? Was at UCLA with Chip Kelly. Yeah, it was a big deal of when they were able to lure him across town. Spoiler alert, USC really wasn't any better on defense. I don't understand. I don't see wasn't better on defense. I don't understand that one because there's so many dudes out there, and it's not like it's like California is a land of quarterbacks and wide receivers and hippies. There are guys that play other positions too. The fact that they can't do jack squat out of from their defense is questionable. Again, I don't know Lynn's system well enough to know how it would fit into Ohio State. We did have a conversation 2 days ago internally. It's like, we should probably get some names together. Well, I don't have any names yet, so I haven't really done any deep dives. This is probably going to be something where, Mickey Pettit and Ross Fulton, some of these guys will lean on them more once we kind of identify some names. Again, it could be as simple as, Matt, you're moving over to the bigger office. You're getting the bigger piece of chicken, and then we'll backfill at that point with whatever we do. Or, again, they could go and look for somebody. But, just know this: Michigan was able to sit there and bring in the reanimated corpse of Wink Martindale, and he was able to do some things this year. So who knows?
I'm just hoping that before we put in all the work on a hot board, that Day just says, no, it's Matt Guerrieri. That way we don't have to do it. Because I still remember trying to put together the hot board to replace Tom Herman as quarterbacks coach. And I dug and dug, did all of these names for all of kinds of backgrounds, all of these offenses. And I remember talking to you, Kevin, and at some point you texted, I'm hearing, and this is before we worked together. You're like, I'm hearing Tim Beck. I'm like, well, that's dumb. There's no way that's valid. I'm not even
Nobody could ever do something that stupid. Nobody could ever sit there and lick that battery.
So I'm not putting that in my top 25 or whatever I did. Look, I appreciate you, Kevin. Go ahead and run with that one. See how it works for you. And then a couple days later, it's Tim Beck. And I'm like, whatever.
I'm a witch. I'm a witch. I don't know where I got that one from, but somebody gave it to me. I don't remember.
All of his quarterbacks got worse over time, Tim Beck. And so, these hot boards, you're trying to find all of these connections, like the coaching trees and, like just the fact that Deonton Lynn worked with Chip Kelly. Chip Kelly's now at Ohio State. You have all of these, you can't be more than 2 degrees of separation. It's like, well, now I'm going to go 4 degrees deep. And it's like, you know what? Let's just outside the box, because Jim Knowles had no connection to Ohio State. So you can't just keep it to who you know. You got to go beyond that. And like, who knew Tom Herman before Urban Meyer hired him? And who knew Ryan Day before Urban Meyer hired him? So it's a lot of work to put, unless you're like actually hearing names, and which he comes here and there, but you're trying to cover a lot of bases, and there are a lot of bases to be covered, not just third.
Well, and with hot boards, the funny thing too is that the reason why you do a hot board is so you can do 9 more versions of it, because the names that you generally have there to begin with don't work out. And you're right. There was a year that it seemed pretty plausible that Larry might retire.
Yeah.
and I wrote up a D-line board. I think I finally took it out of our admin like in the last 6 months. I just don't. I was like, I'm playing with fire. This has been sitting in the drafts folder for a couple of years now. Let's just get rid of this. And I guarantee you, none of the names on there. They're one of the names isn't even in football anymore. I mean, it's just part of the craziness. But I want to get to this from JRM0979. As a Michigan fan who hates Penn State more than Ohio State, this has me concerned. I'm concerned about JRM0979 for having more hate for Penn State than Ohio State. Maybe he lives in Pennsylvania. Penn State isn't allowed to ever win a championship again. So you probably were getting a little stressed out during the CFP this year with them having a pretty easy draw into the semifinals, going against Notre Dame, kind of coming down to who wanted to lose more, and never bet against Penn State's desire to lose. But that one could have been interesting. But that with Koltaniki on the offensive side and Knowles on the defensive side, the coordinators are great. The head coach, the offensive line, wide receivers. I'm looking for them. Somebody was like, they're really going to make a run. They're bringing everybody back. Okay, but were they that great to begin with? Or they're going to be a year older. I think some of these guys are going to be better just because of their physical maturation and everything else. But, that offensive line still was kind of up and down. Wide receiver was just down. I don't know necessarily where the fear on Penn State comes from, other than it's going to have a bunch of guys that can all buy beer for their teammates.
Super chat from Chris Lane. Never been so happy and wanted to puke like this. Again, this is the byproduct of having a great coaching staff. Other teams' programs come in and pay them more or pay them a lot to leave. And again, it's a stressful job and has not been an easy 3 years for Jim Knowles, or I'd say anybody on the coaching staff. But again, you win a national championship. I appreciate that you're happy. You hate to see the guy go, but it's a lot better than the alternative when nobody wants your coaches. And we saw that a lot with the Jim Tressel offense with John Peterson and Jim Boltman. Like, nobody wanted those guys, and you kind of saw why. So it's much, much better to have guys that everybody wants.
Everybody wanted Nick Siciliano. You shut your mouth.
And that's another one where, like, you saw the results, and to think like Terrell Pryor spent 3 years at Ohio State and was never an all Big Ten player, like that shouldn't have happened. There should have been more there, and he should have been developed better overall. Zinter says defense hasn't been the reason Penn State hasn't won anything in years. Don't see how $3 million for a DC makes them much different. I kind of agree. This is, well, is he being brought in? Is Jim Knowles being brought in to beat Ohio State? Because maybe that's it. And they play in November 1st, after each team gets a bye next season. I think they might meet more than just once next year, though. I think we talked about Oregon and set the over under on 1.5 for Ohio State and Oregon, and that hit. I might do the same thing with Penn State. They will make the playoffs again. Ohio State should make the playoffs again. But when Jim Knowles and that Penn State defense comes into town on November 1st, after a bye week, they'll have plenty of time to scheme up Ohio State, to look back at what they've done, to scheme their own stuff. That's going to be a fun one. Mitchell Carter says, "Bring in Kirby Smart." You know what? He might want to change of pace eventually after not winning it at Georgia for 2 years in a row. Georgia fans might want him out of town anyway.
Are you saying that the pressure there is driving him too quickly, or he's driving too quickly?
No driving. Only get driven somewhere. We saw those.
That was the Mike Leach thing. Mike Leach enjoyed to imbibe a little bit, and they finally got a driver for him. So I get it.
Well, and then what was it in Pasadena with the driverless taxis? Is that where we were when they had those? Like,
yes.
You should get those for the entire Georgia program. Get the driverless taxis.
Or the driverless bird scooters.
There you go. Wow. Welcome to Columbus, Nick Saban. I don't know about that one. He's going to be busy being the czar of college football.
He's got to host his Airbnb.
That's true. That's true. Another one. Troy V. If Dan Lanning ever wants another ring, he can come here to run our defense. Boy, shoot for the moon and end up amongst the stars with all of these defensive coordinator suggestions and all of these names. Oh, no. I don't think I wonder if Brent Venables would be an option. This is keep chopping. I wonder if Brent Venables would be an option. He is a sitting duck at OU. I'm not sure, Kevin, how well Ryan Day and Brent Venables get along, because it was kind of Ryan Day that discovered, hey, if you just shield your signs from Brent Venables, the Clemson defense isn't as good as it once was.
Well, Ryan Day is, I mean, all coaches are a little bit nutso to begin with. I mean, I'm just going to throw that out there. But Ryan Day, on the spectrum of sort of nutso to absolute nut job, is way on the tame side. Venables is not. So, yeah, I don't think they would get along very well. If they could. I already made my vacuum cleaner repair joke this week, so I can't make another one. No, I don't think that would be a love connection. But the reality is that it'll be interesting too to see, as we're down to the final 4 teams in the NFL and all those jobs start to come open, what comes out of there. Yes, I reminded you the game is on Fox. Philadelphia and Washington. I don't even know what the score is. So when you see me looking over there, that's because the game's on over there. But I'm not watching. My plan was to come home after my spicy Mexican meal and lay down on the sofa and fall asleep until the AFC game. But
dude, if you fall asleep after a spicy Mexican meal, do you understand the nightmares that you're going to have?
Dude, I'm living nightmares. I'm convinced on a higher plane I did something wrong, and this is just my penance for that. But yeah, 14-3 Eagles according to Neil Harris.
Ouch.
Yeah. We'll see. Jaden Daniels is somebody who can lead some comebacks. Scary Terry out there. Everything else. Basically, this is like Al-Qaeda versus Al-Qaeda as a Cowboys fan for me. I really am not. There's not an option that I like that coming out of this one. So.
Poor Kevin.
I know. It's awful.
The Gridiron guy saying, are we at risk of losing our defensive players? This is kind of a common refrain throughout the chat. I don't think so. Again, they can't go anywhere until after the spring anyway. So anybody that leaves after the spring, it may come down to fit at that point, but nobody's going to be leaving at this point because Jim Knowles is gone, because he was not a position coach. He would float around from position to position or not, because I don't know how often Larry Johnson would even want him in the defensive line room, that sort of thing. So I don't think players are going to be like, I came here for Jim Knowles, because I don't know that there's anybody who would specifically say I came here for Jim Knowles. I don't know that we've ever heard that. But again, fantastic defensive coordinator, best defensive coordinator in the nation, built a fantastic, grew and turned this defense, got better every year. Like, you can see it, and he's going to do the same thing for Penn State. He's going to do very, very well for them. But I don't think anybody's leaving because Jim Knowles is leaving.
No, I mean, I think I could see maybe somebody who's promising too, like number 2 on the depth chart, coming off and maybe doing a little bit of a surprise there. If you already have a starting position at Ohio State, reigning national champs, everything else, why exactly would you be leaving at that point? I think a lot of the guys that are, buried 3 and lower already have had their chance to portal. That portal door is closed until the spring. I mean, and we touched upon this earlier. Jim Knowles, his players are very loyal to him, would do, anything he asks, but he's not going to be the guy that's going to go out and, sell, a ketchup popsicle to Tony Gerdeman in a white dress. I mean, it's just not going to happen. It's just not necessarily his thing. I love mixing metaphors.
I don't think you mixed it. I think that's perfectly. That everybody understood that one completely. That was not a mixed metaphor at all.
Well,
that's just
I didn't want anybody thinking about you in a dress, like especially a sundress. It's a little cold out.
Well,
but people are asking why, and there's a lot of speculation as to this, that, and the other. Let's deal in a lot of reality here. Maybe put the speculation off to the side. I mean, it is a pressure cooker at Ohio State. It's not Duke. It's not Okie State. It's not Cornell. Not saying that Penn State isn't a pressure cooker, but they are a lot further removed from their last real taste of success than at Ohio State. Over the 3 years of his time at Ohio State, I can count no less than 6 times that fans were ready to run him out of town. And Ohio State hasn't lost a lot of games in 3 years. So that means some of it's coming off of wins. Well, that win just wasn't good enough. So there's a little bit of that. I think part of it, too, is now that Ryan Day is a CEO head coach, you know what CEOs do? They go in and meddle with the next level down. And maybe Jim Knowles wants to have a little bit more autonomy than that. So I think that there could be something there. But that, I mean, the one thing I don't buy is, oh, well, he's closer to Philadelphia. Yes, in distance, but not in perception. Basically, Penn State, State College, Pennsylvania, is like an 11th century British hovel with like the plague running through it. I mean, it's not Philadelphia. It's not anything like that. So
it's not even Winterfell.
Yes, it's not. It's not. It's like, what was the one that was always blown up and burnt down and everything? I rewatched Game of Thrones recently, and I've already forgotten all of it. Just, I was just there for my girl Marjorie Tyrell.
Flea Bottom was one of those.
Maybe Flea Bottom or something. Maybe even like the Iron Islands or whatever. They were once, they were once great. Now, nobody gives a crap about them. But still, I don't buy the whole getting closer to Philadelphia or whatever. I'm from Los Angeles. I just can't run away further from Los Angeles if possible. I like to visit for like a day or two, and then I'm like, F this place, I'm out of here.
And I know we've got a bunch of new people on. This is hitting the the start of the second hour. If you could hit the thumbs up, we would appreciate that. And of course, continue to find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. There's been so many rumors, and I know everybody's talking about the Jim Knowles' girlfriend didn't want to come to Ohio, and like there's so many contradictory reports on that one. Just I would say don't even worry about that. I think more than anything, these last couple of years, there was just a lot of fighting, a lot of tug of war defensively on how things were going to go. And at some point, Jim Knowles just told himself, I'm not going to do that anymore. And even with getting Ohio State was going to match whatever, that's what they had said. Ryan Day said they're going to try to keep everybody. There's still some scarring that comes from that. It's like, what faith do I have that if I come back, it's not going to be the same, or it's going to be different? Like, who is going to be on the staff? Well, it's going to be the same staff. It's like, well, why would anything be different? And it's just, it's a lot of work, and it was not probably the best working environment. So you go somewhere where you're going to be theoretically in control of everything that you want, and James Franklin will leave you alone, and you can just operate. I'm sure he probably got some good feedback from Tom Allen on that, and Manny Diaz, and then you go from there. And it's a fresh start. And I think I can't fault anybody necessarily for wanting a fresh start after this season that the Buckeyes have had. But also, again, like I can't say everything that I heard and that we've heard going on behind the scenes, but it just sounded like a lot of drama and a lot of stress. And sometimes it's just time for a change.
In a room full of millionaires together, and you don't have to necessarily make 2.1 or whatever he was making at Ohio State to be a millionaire. You can sit there and string together a couple of years and still be a millionaire. And it's, it is a very alpha room with a bunch of alphas that are trying to out alpha each other. And, you get what you get. Roman Wilson, is Chip getting interviews? I saw a headline, but figured someone was looking for clicks. There have been rumors of him being on the list of desirables for an OC job, either in Jacksonville or Houston. I think that Tom Fornelli was one from CBS that I saw reported. I'm not going to say it was necessarily the quest for clicks. I think that, we've seen Eddie George, former Ohio State running back Eddie George, like interview for the Bears head coaching job. There are, this is not a case of, well, we're going to put 5 names out there and we're going to really interview 2 of them and really only going to consider 1 of them. In the National Football League, we're going to put 17 names out there, consider 50 of them, and then still piss you off by not getting anybody you want.
and then hiring somebody who had been fired by three other franchises. Great job.
Oh my
Dick
God,
Duran.
the golden ticket of the NFL, of having an NFL job. You may have to go back a rung on the ladder, like in Chutes and Ladders. You may have to go back one, but you are hired forever. You will. I mean, they may as well. If I'm majoring in NFL coaching, here's gear for all the teams because you will need it as you go from team to team to team to team, and you will never ever be out.
While you're saying that, I just thought, you know what? Let me read Bill Davis's Wikipedia entry on, on teams he's coached for, because right now he's actually with the Texans. This is his first year with the Texans, but I'm not even going to get into it because he's coached pretty much everywhere. Steelers, Panthers, Browns, Packers, Falcons, Giants, 49ers, Cardinals, Browns, Eagles, Ohio State, Cardinals, Texans. Like he
Did I
doesn't
hear
ever stay.
Did I hear
What?
a Niner in there?
A couple of Niners. The longest stint he's ever had was 19 to 22 with the Cardinals. Like this guy's been around so long, he's probably coached at both the St. Louis and Phoenix Cardinals and Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah, yeah. It's nuts. And the thing is that obviously, as we are joined by almost 1,900 of our closest friends between all of the different chat channels, there's a lot of concern out there. You want to keep it locked in over at BuckeyeHuddle.com as we try to make sense of this with you. Join us on the Huddle board presented by Jeff Ruby Steakhouse, Columbus. By far, in my opinion, the best Ohio State community out there. $4.99 for your first month. And that first month, I think we still have some confetti left from the championship game. I know Tom Orr got a huge mailer out of those out earlier, but we still have others. I think McChickens was asking about it. There is a thread on the Huddle board presented by Jeff Ruby's Columbus of national championship confetti. You get in there, you contact Tom via DM, he'll get you on the list. We have it until we don't. So,
and I still have a reserve of a bag of about like this. We can't keep the reserves with with the full portion. Like we got to keep them separate in case something were to happen. We don't want to lose all of the confetti in one fell swoop.
Yeah, the confetti flu or something like that. And then I even got a piece of one of the streamers today from the celebration on the field. There's no real marking there. Could have come from Party City if Party City didn't go out of business. But it's sitting in the passenger seat in my car right now. But it's a great time to be a Buckeye. It's a great time to be a member of Buckeye Huddle. If you're watching us on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, hit that thumbs up. It all helps us with our distribution. We just broke 25,000 active subscribers on our YouTube channel. That puts us, yes, Mr. Beast has like 4.9 quadrillion. I mean, I get it. We're not Mr. Beast. We're three beasts, and Tony owns Mr. Business. But 25,000 puts us in a rare air in terms of websites, and we couldn't do it without you all. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. If you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, write us a 5-star review. That helps us with distribution there too. Again, we want to get the gospel out there. We want to bring the news to you, but the best place to get that is BuckeyeHuddle.com.
And then Paulette Bailey said, from what I'm hearing, it's not official yet. So, and again, nothing official from Ohio State, nothing official yet from Penn State. And when we talked to Ross Bjork, Ohio State AD, about 2 hours ago, he said he wasn't really interested in talking about anything other than the celebration. But again, like Jim Knowles was not there today from what anybody saw. So you can do the math, and there are other reports coming out from guys who talk to agents like Pete Thamel, and they get their information, their national information, and a bunch of national reporters are saying it. We have heard it as well, and so while it's not officially official, it's as official as these things get before they become official. Super chat from Jordan Kapler. Can I have Kevin's address so I can pick up my Mexican food and some confetti from today? Now the thing is, Jordan, the food will be spicy, but it will also be cold. So
it's in the fridge now. And trust me, if you want it, I will. I'll doctor it up for you. I'll doctor it. But my address is 124 Eat Me Lane.
It's French. Market X. I see Market X. Just telling me Tom and Kevin aren't moving to the Penn State beat. That's all I care about. Kevin, do you have something to tell us?
There's about as much chance of me going to the Penn State beat as there is Jack Sawyer getting a 5th year of eligibility.
Yeah, I don't know how many people watched that today. Jack Sawyer, when he got a chance to talk with as the captains all got called up there, he did announce that he was coming back for his 5th year, which surprised everybody. But also, he does not have a 5th year, so he cannot come back for a 5th year. And that was a good laugh by all. Although whoever is the defensive coordinator would love to have him back. And we haven't really talked about the celebration today because the news never stops. There's always something going on. As we're all there at the celebration, like waiting for this thing to come down. And then Jordan DMing me, hey, you want to grab some lunch? Like, I wish I could. I've got to go cover the team. I got the breaking news going on, and that's just, boy, there's no sleep till, I don't know, March, basically. Signing day is next Wednesday. We may get to talk to Ryan Day at that point. I don't know how much clamoring Ohio State's coaches are going to be doing right now to talk with us. They're going to be trying to get as far away from football, I think, as they can outside of recruiting. Kevin, what is the do you know the recruiting schedule right now? What the calendar is? Is there anything going on right now?
I mean, there were recruits on campus for the celebration.
That's true.
There are visits
I did see
going on
that.
right now. Ohio State major target Albert Hill was at USC this weekend. So coaches have been on the road. Chip Kelly's been on the road. Players can come on campus. So we're still in open weekends. I think that what will happen is I think next weekend we'll close the 25 cycle. They'll go quiet, then dead. I think they go dead after Sunday into signing day. And then I think that the next major change in the calendar will be this spring evaluation period. So, and again, you hear dead period. It's like, oh my God, that means absolutely no contact. No, that just means you jump through hoops in terms of how the contact works to stay compliant. Obviously 26 is the class on the clock right now. 27s, there's still some jumping through hoops to be able to talk to them if you're a program because of how the NC2A works. But they're going to go right. I mean, obviously this is more mixed problem. They're going to go right into winter conditioning. And then we haven't seen a workup of what spring ball is going to look like. But the usual spring ball is 2 practices before spring break, and then all the rest of it after, with the spring game generally being the second Saturday in April, unless that second Saturday is like the 8th or the 9th. It's generally somewhere between the 14th and 16th. Could Ohio State look to drag it out an extra week? Potentially, but I still think there's a lot of importance to start before spring break because that is a way to manipulate, and it's legal. It's not cheating if everybody does it. It's a way to manipulate the clock to get a little bit more hands-on time with instructional time with your players.
So last year, spring ball opened on March 5th, which was a Tuesday, the first Tuesday in March. This year is the 4th. So I assume spring break is the week after that. Oh, same time as daylight savings time starts. I don't know if that's a good idea. I don't know you should have spring break same time daylight savings starts. But I understand wanting to get the hands-on sooner. But if it's going to be fascinating to see if they still want a break, if they just decide, let's start on the 18th, which frankly is the day after St. Patrick's Day. And I don't know if you want to start anything the day after St. Patrick's Day. Maybe just, I don't know what they're going to do with spring yet. And I don't know how much they really want to just cram stuff. I have seen other programs go into May though. So, there is some precedent for that. I wonder if they even know exactly what they're going to do yet, because they're very well planned out, and I'm sure they have a couple of contingencies, but like all of the veterans, the few that have come back, they don't necessarily need this spring as much as the younger guys do. It's not going to be a wasted spring by any means, but I'm fascinated to see how this goes. I like this question from Andrew K14. As a Penn State fan, I prefer to keep my expectations low. Should I make plans to see my first game at the Shoe? You should always make plans to see a game in Ohio Stadium as a Penn State fan. Now, it may not go well for you. It may, but so much of college football is just the experience, going and seeing other places and experiencing that. In terms of what to expect from Jim Knowles, like Penn State had a number 7 defense in the nation this year. You're losing Abdul Carter, but you're keeping some other guys. I don't know that you could expect to do better than that. So, Kevin, this might be the first time a Jim Knowles defense takes a step back from when he comes in to what they did the year before.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be really interesting because again, we talked about it earlier. They've got some guys, and it was even when Jim Knowles got to Ohio State. I don't think they certainly didn't have the depth on defense in terms of the second team and beyond that they possess right now. I mean, Ohio State had to do a lot of work to kind of refill the coffers and everything else, and you're going to look at Penn State, and yes, losing Abdul Carter is huge, even though they always seem to put somebody in that 11 jersey that ends up being pretty good. But it takes time. It's going to take a little bit of time, and it's not a matter of, I need the time to learn the new terminology or whatever. I need the time to learn a couple of new plays. I mean, I expect to see a pretty significant rework there. You don't bring in a coach for a reported $3.1 million a year as a caretaker. You can sit there and bring in. You can go from Tom Allen to Tim Allen and pay half the price or whatever if you already feel that you've got a good system in there, and then just figure out what your play calling duties are going to be. So to Andrew K14's question. Yeah, I mean, I think you make the plans on seeing it, because here's the reality. I'm taking a breath to ground myself, because all I've done is this has just been a Penn State snuff fest for me. Is that if not this year, when? If not this year, when? You bring back Allar, you bring back the 2 running backs, you bring back a lot of some other key personnel. I mean, yes, you obviously lose some key personnel. But if it doesn't happen here in 25-26, does this look like a team that's lined up for it to happen the following year or the year after that? Yeah, I really like the coordinators, the names of the coordinators. Obviously, I've seen a pretty good 3-year run at Ohio State from Jim Knowles. I saw some moments where Colton Hickey looked really, really impressive calling things, but I also saw some moments where the Penn State offense also seemed to be off to Jupiter to get more stupider with some of the stuff that they've done. So if you're not going to go then, and Penn State is unrivaled. They have no rivals. So you don't know when they might play Ohio State again. So if you really want to go and see a game at the Shoe, you better do it now, because I don't know what the schedule looks like. But Penn State is not going to be on the schedule yearly because they are unrivaled.
Yeah. I like this comment. This is interesting to think about from Robert Howard. Tony Alford came to Columbus the year after they won the 2014 national championship, left the year before they won their next national championship, and went to Michigan the year after they win the national championship. Just trying to find a national championship and going about it all the wrong ways. And all due respect to Tony Alford, I don't know that anybody is complaining about replacing him with Carlos Loughlin, because the running backs this year were fantastic in every facet: running the ball, blocking, run blocking, pass blocking, all of that, catching the ball. Jay Programmer, don't look past Texas. Buckeyes might be one and done.
You're not done after one. We saw that. I mean, they might be 0-1 to start the season. That's very possible. The Arch Manning experience coming to town and everything else. Remember, Texas lost like 11,000 wide receiver or running backs to start the year. They're going to be pretty good. I know Ohio State is a favorite, a betting favorite right now in the futures market. If you really like Ohio State, maybe hold off and wait, because I think that line is going to look the other direction by the time it's all there and said and done, because Ohio State is returning a lot. So I don't think anybody is looking past Texas in terms of what Ohio State's going to be able to do next season. I think that the reality is that is week 1 out of conference, quite possibly 1 versus 2 or 2 versus 1 or whatever. If there is ever such a thing as an okay loss, that would be it.
Yeah, for sure. First week, 1 versus 2, probably or Georgia's going to be in there somewhere, regardless of who their quarterback is. Everybody loves to throw Georgia in there. It's like they're still defending national champions, even though they've not won the championship in a while. I'm sure everybody saw the Terry McLaurin touchdown for Washington. Always fun to watch that guy.
I did. I'm talking and looking at the chat thread. So,
but one of the nicest Buckeyes you'll ever want to meet. That's for sure.
Oh my God, what a great kid! And I still talk to him on Twitter. He'll DM me out of the blue sometimes. Hey, how's it going? I'm like, dude, you're awesome. You don't need to worry about me. Come on, you're Scary Terry.
Yeah, you're Scary Terry, like for sure. Clever and witty. Knowles must be pissed about something to leave Ohio State for one of our biggest competitors. No idea what he'd be upset about. We've been talking about this for the last hour and plus. So we've discussed some of the issues and it wasn't always rosy. There was just a lot of difficulty in being able to run what he wants to run and trying to convince others to come along and not really being able to do that. He'll be able to do that at Penn State. You were talking about, running whatever defense. Like, he's going to have to run his defense, or else why leave? Like, he's already dealt with not being able to run his entire defense as he would like to do. And so now, James Franklin, here you go. And in terms of anybody leaving because of it, I don't expect anybody to leave. I do wonder, though, about a guy like CJ Hicks being told, yeah, we're going to put you on the edge in 2025. What does the new defensive coordinator say about that? What does for any of these guys, we're going to see something in the spring where maybe there just aren't fits for people, or people don't like the defensive coordinator, or don't like who the new position coach is for that position group there. So there's still going to be some fluctuations. That's every year, but especially when there's some coaching changes after the fact. It won't be anybody leaving now unless they're going to sue the NCAA for not having for restricting fair trade or whatever, and transferring outside of the portal or whatever. So we'll see more in May. And I'm not going to be putting anybody in the portal at this point, but we don't like to speculate on that stuff. Instead, Kevin, why don't you read this super chat?
I will. I had to cough. I still have that chest cold that I picked up at the Rose Bowl. I think maybe I shook it for like 12 minutes and got it again, or got a new version of it or something. So I apologize that I keep going on mute. Super chat from Mike Pilch. Until PSU can throw the ball, they aren't sniffing a title. Running backs don't win titles. Defense is really good. Will be the same PSU team as always. Only got to the Final Four due to seeding. In the end, they don't recruit all the elite level needed.
Well,
go ahead. I was just going to say, I want to address this point by point, but I'll do it quickly because while I love hearing my voice, I don't know if y'all love hearing my voice over and over and over again. Running backs can do some things, but we have seen with Penn State, no passing offense is not good. I mean, it's just not a good situation. Jumping to the point about easy seeding, yeah, I think that they're seeding SMU and Boise right there, got them into the semis. So, yeah, they'll go and win those games. Texas, almost found out against Arizona State after getting out to a pretty good lead, and Arizona State came roaring back that, you got to play as close to 60 minutes as you can. I mean, I think the defense is going to be pretty good. I think that the loss of Abdul Carter is probably not being sold highly enough. But as I said 10 minutes ago, they put somebody else in 11 and he plays well. So, I mean, it's not necessarily like it's a perfect storm. I think Indiana is going to be much more of a perfect storm. And I know they're going to live in the portal and everything else, but they were able to get all those dudes from JMU and bring them over. I don't think we're going to see that type of situation. But, yeah, I mean, they don't necessarily recruit at that level because Ohio State can go in and recruit the Jersey area and some places that Penn State normally would lock a lot of teams out of. And while Greg Schiano hasn't done a great job of keeping everybody out of that area, I don't know. Penn State suddenly didn't become a better recruiting team with Jim Knowles, and that's not sour grapes. That is just a reality of where he is as a recruiter. Now, maybe Penn State will recruit a little bit better with the legend of Jim Knowles, which has come to a major chapter point with a national championship. So maybe there will be guys that think a little bit more highly about Penn State, but they're going to have to bring in stunt recruiters to get stuff done because that's just not necessarily Knowles' strong point.
Yeah, and I'm with you until the Penn State passing game, and I'm not trying to put all of this on Drew Aller. The receivers did not step up for him, but also you look at they played 4 postseason games. Here's Drew Aller's completion percentage in those games: 51.3, 59.1, 52, 52.2. Like their pass efficiency in December was middle of the pack nationally. It was like 59th all of 130 teams. Like that's not good enough. You need to be more efficient. You need to be more explosive. And yeah, it's not just Aller, but he made some bad throws, and he's never really been super reliable. You can the biggest thing that you can rely upon Aller is the defenses can rely upon him to give them the ball at the worst possible opportunity for Penn State. He's going to give you the ball. He's going to give you some opportunities to make plays. And as Cheryl says, still, regardless, James Franklin is still the Penn State coach. And it reminds me of the story I've told many times here is walking out of the Penn State game this year after Ohio State's 2013 win, heading to the post-game press conference, walking next to a Penn State fan, and I was like, hey, how you doing? He's like, it's the same thing every year. And I'm like, well, yeah, but you guys are going to make the playoffs. He's like, don't care. It's the same thing every year. It's Franklin. And then you get to that, through that point, I wanted to wonder when Penn State's in the Final Four, semifinals, I wonder what that guy is thinking now. But the thing is, I guarantee he's thinking the exact same thing. It's still James Franklin. This is, as Thomas said, and other people have said, Penn State has made two playoff games, and they have changed nothing regarding the James Franklin narrative. You've had one of the best seasons in history, and you could only get to a certain level. And it's like, yeah, this is all he can do. And it takes a lot to get beyond that, for sure. And Michigan was very fortunate to get there last year based on the talent that they had. Ohio State, very talented this year. They get there the toughest road ever for a national championship team. And it's a lot to expect. I don't think anybody should expect to win a 12-team playoff.
You talk about being able to get beyond there. Not many people or businesses can. Like Bed Bath and Beyond can get beyond there. But, we go back to James Franklin and talking about being elite. When has Penn State necessarily shown that they've been elite in terms of being able to win those big games? When you go back and you look at the 2024 season, did Penn State have a tremendous postseason run, or did Penn State win a couple of games it was supposed to win? I went back and recorded some of the talking head BS during the course of the season. I'd recorded on the selection Sunday or whatever. And Booger McFarland basically came out and said that if Franklin didn't get his team to the championship game, that none of the noise would stop and none of the detractors would stop. And I don't want to put words or boogers into Booger's mouth or nose, but yeah, I don't know if I necessarily disagree with him on there. That I don't think that they showed me anything this year to lead me to believe that they're anything other than the second understudy in the Big Ten.
I'm looking real quick at Penn State's schedule next year, and give me one moment while I bring that up.
Yeah, I'll try and find. Oh, I thought you. All right, I was going to filibuster for you.
I've got it. So they open with Nevada, then FIU, and Villanova. That's their non-conference. So they're going to be 3-0. And then they have a week off, and then Oregon comes to town. And then they go to UCLA. Then they've got Northwestern at home. Then they go to Iowa. Then they're off. Then they're at Ohio State. Then Indiana comes to town. Then they go to East Lansing. Then home for Nebraska. Then they're at Rutgers. And as I look at this is 10-2, 11-1, assuming they beat Oregon. I'm going to take Ohio State at home against Penn State, but everything else, I don't know. Yeah, they could stumble at Iowa. Anybody could. Where is Michigan State and Aiden Childs next year? It's in year 2 under Jonathan Smith. Indiana, I'm not expecting to be a huge challenge for Penn State, but it could be sneaky. Nebraska, who knows? But I'm still looking at this and I'm thinking 10 or 11 wins.
And that's good enough for inclusion into the playoffs. But it all comes down into seeding. And the thing is, you smoke them if you got them this year, because I really think in 26 they're going to fix some of these inequities in terms of how playoff seeding works. And again, it's not like the big conferences, the big two conferences got like incredibly screwed. Tennessee will tell you they got screwed. Oregon will tell you that they got screwed. But once again, all hail the 5 seed or all hail the 6 seed. I mean, there's a lot of power to be there and to get that good draw. Now Ohio State's like, I got your seeding right here, and said we're just going to come in through the front door. And they came in through the front door, and they punched your old man, and they made a sandwich, and they freaking wiped the knife off on your drapes, and then they sat there and left the swinging screen door open on their way through, running roughshod to go beat up your neighbors.
That's dark. Wow.
I could have taken it so much darker.
First you quote Booger McFarland.
It's 4:16 right now. It's still way too early for me to get really dark.
And we don't want to go Kevin Noon after dark. That's for sure. I think we've pretty much covered. I know there's still a ton of people.
I was going to say we've been hovering around 2,000 between the 3 platforms. So thank you. Yeah. Thank you, everybody watching. We know there's a big information request out there with all of it, and hopefully our hour 30 that we've spent with you so far, and it sounds like we're kind of toward the end, has been at least a little cathartic, even if we don't necessarily have all the answers yet, as this is still very much breaking news.
Yeah, and one last time I'll say Ohio State has not confirmed anything. Penn State has not confirmed anything. Jim Knowles has certainly not confirmed anything. Just things are being finalized, and then once that happens, I would expect something to be announced probably later on this evening, and then probably
that's for Penn State to do.
Yeah, exactly.
The outgoing school never is the one to put the release out. So people are like, well, until I hear Ohio State say something, well, I keep waiting. Ohio State doesn't have to say anything, nor will it.
Well, Penn State could make their release, and then Ohio State could respond, Jim Knowles is still under contract. We're not going to let him out. And then, boom, we got a nice little lawsuit going on. It'll be fantastic. But I do expect that to come out tonight, and then the presser probably tomorrow or Tuesday there in Happy Valley. And so as we wrap up, if you could hit the thumbs up one more time before we go, if you have not yet done so, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so. And again, find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com, $4.99 for your first month. If you want some championship confetti, we still have some. And if you want some, we can get some to you. There's a thread on the Buckeye Huddle message board presented by Jeff Ruby's Columbus of how to let us know, send us your address. We'll get that shipped out to you. See some confetti there
This is my private stash.
Never let people see your private stash. There,
don't
Kevin,
get high on your own supply.
I wasn't going to say it, but then you did it. So great job. But there you go. We've got stuff like that if you would like some. So thank you all for tuning in. We do truly appreciate it, and we will talk to you guys later.